Shabbat Shalom. I can't tell you how happy I am to be on the bima this morning celebrating our wonderful bat mitzvah girl. I told her family yesterday that I really needed a simcha today. I needed a happy occasion because this week I officiated 4 funerals. Now, I don't want this sermon to be a downer, especially on a happy and beautiful Shabbat morning like this one. But I noticed something about this week, about this Parsha, and about this bat mitzvah that was particularly inspiring. So I'd like to share some ideas with you that I learned this week, and perhaps they will encourage you the way they encourage me. All of the funerals I officiated this week were for women, and while each one was special in their own way, I'd like to talk about 2 of the women who are no longer with us. The first of which I'd like to speak about is Rose Williams, whose family is here this morning. Rose was a Holocaust survivor, an educator who was a member of this congregation for decades. Rose wrote a book about her experience in the war and in the camps entitled Letters to Rose. And there's a part of her book where she writes about her experience in Auschwitz, and she writes about the evil Dr. Mengele, the SS officer who would inspect Jewish inmates every morning to determine if they were fit enough to work in the camps. Those Jews who were sick or half dead, as Rose called them, Dr. Mengele would order them to the left of the line, while those who were capable of working were sent to the right. Rose recounts how miserable and depressed she was in Auschwitz. The shoes she was given gave her blisters. She was exhausted. She was starving. It was all too much for her, and she wanted out. So one morning during inspection, she asked Dr. Mengele, she said, "Sir, can I go to the left?" And he responded to her with great anger, shoving her to the right, saying, "You are young, you can live." When Rose heard this, it was the wake-up call she needed. And from that moment on, she decided that she would do everything in her power to survive. She worked with her chin up and encouraged other Jews in the camp to persevere even when things seemed impossible. Eventually, Rose would be liberated by the British, and she came to Texas, where she lived in San Antonio for many years. And she used that time to become a Holocaust educator and activist here in our community, sharing with students about the horrors of the Shoah and encouraging people to love their neighbors and live in peace. Her story and her legacy inspire me. I hope they inspire you as well. Another woman from our congregation who passed was Sonia Goldberg. Sonia was born in Germany and was 14 years old when the Nazis invaded her town. Sonia, her mother, and younger sister fled their village and attempted to get to Holland, where they hoped that they could board a boat to America so that the girls could live with relatives in New York City. If you haven't seen a map of Europe lately, I'll tell you the Netherlands are hundreds of miles away from Germany. So the trip that these women made was long, arduous, and difficult. And along the way, every time they encountered a Nazi officer at a waypoint, they would have to pay him off with money to keep going to the next stop. Well, the story goes that they were traveling and they had already come such a long way. They had to take numerous trains, walk incredibly long distances, and pay evil men off just to survive. But when they had almost reached their destination, they realized they were out of money to bribe the next guard. So a decision had to be made. What were they going to do? Sonia's mother knew that she could get more money if they went back to their town in Germany, but that trip was too difficult and treacherous to make with all 3 of them, and Sonia's mother was too afraid to leave Sonia's younger sister alone. So it was decided that 14-year-old Sonia would go back alone. And you know what? She did. She braved miles and miles of uncertainty, went back to her village to get more money, and she came all the way back, all by herself, at just 14 years old. When she finally arrived in Holland, her mother put her daughters on a boat for New York, and she never saw them again. Sonia and her sister moved here. They learned a new language. They started new lives. Another inspiring story, to say the least. Our Torah portion for this morning, Parshat Shemot, begins the book of Exodus, and it likewise contains the stories of inspiring women. Now, obviously, the main focus of this parsha is to tell the reader the origin story of Moses, the origin story of Moses, who is the main character of the story, and arguably the main character of the whole Torah. But I want to point out that if it weren't for the women in this parsha, Moses would have never been able to become the leader he was. The Torah explains in our parsha that Pharaoh told the Hebrew midwives, Shifra and Puah, that when they delivered babies for the Israelite women, they were to kill all the baby boys, but let the daughters live. But we're told that the midwives fear God and they disobeyed Pharaoh, saving the baby boys. And because of their act of bravery and defiance, this allowed for Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, to be born. But it doesn't stop there. Moses' mother, Yocheved, likewise decided to be brave. And in order to let her son live, she decided to place him in a basket and float him down the Nile River so that someone might find him, have compassion on him, and save him. As Moses floated down the river, it was his sister, Miriam, who watched him from afar. And that's when we encounter another inspiring woman from our Torah, Pharaoh's daughter. She finds him, adopts him, and empowers him to become a prince of Egypt. Later in our parsha, Moses will meet Zipporah, a Cushite woman whom he will marry. And I'll remind all of us that it is Zipporah who circumcises their sons when Moses lacks the courage to do so. And dear friends, that brings us to this morning, to this beautiful Shabbat with our wonderful bat mitzvah girl. I'm told that it was Estella who wanted to have a bat mitzvah here at Agudas Achim so that she could read from the Torah. And while other Jewish traditions or movements might seek to prevent their daughters from reading the sacred Torah, citing what I see as false narratives from our tradition, I stand here proudly this morning knowing that it's because of the sacrifices that our matriarchs made, the sacrifices that women like Rose Williams and Sonia Goldberg made. Because of those sacrifices, our Jewish girls can become the next generation of inspiring Jewish women who will change our world for the better. They walked so girls like Estella could fly. So as I said earlier, I needed this morning, not just because I could really use a happy event. I needed this morning to see the next chapter of the amazing story that is Jewish life in the 21st century. And watching Estella carry the torch of all the women that came before her inspires me. And I can't wait to see what comes next. Shabbat Shalom.